to another In the Style of tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at Afro-Cuban music, or salsa, which I'm sure many of you know it. For this study piece, once again, I have acquired the help of a very close friend of mine and great musician to capture the vibe and the energy for what's needed. For salsa, on flute, Mr. Mike Rowlands. So be sure to check him out. So, without further ado, let's check out the study piece. So this study piece is what is known as a Descarga, which actually means jam session. Although it does have some preconceived ideas, such as the bass line introduction and outro, and also the coro, the vocal chorus in between open solos. The late great daddy of Cuban bass, Israel Cachao Lopez, has quite a few different albums which are made up solely of descargas. I've mentioned one of them in the suggested listings, so you need to check them out. Just like when you're playing a pop ballad or a disco track, for example, you need to know the bass feels. You need to know the bass feels which are stylistically coherent with those styles, and also how your part fits in with the rest of the instruments in the ensemble. And Afro-Cuban music is no different. Due to the jigsaw type nature of the rhythm section, feels, it's really important to know your styles, as it can be really difficult just to get away with it. Now, the rhythmical style of the study piece, of this Descarga, is what's called son, in a 2/3 clave, and is typical of what you might hear in a son montuno. When I refer to son montuno, I'm actually referring to a section at the end of a song which is commonly opened up for solos and coro, and this is where the tumbos, the actual part that the bass is playing and the piano playing, the piano part, the bass part, the percussion part, this is generally where those tumbos are most developed. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go into every style today and examine the relationship between the bass and the percussion and the piano, because we will be here all day. But I highly recommend to get hold of a book called the Salsa Guidebook for Piano and Ensemble by Rebecca Marleon. We can find a comprehensive guide to all of the Afro-Cuban styles, including danzón, cha-cha-cha, Afro-Cuban 6/8, and a lot of other great information. One of the main characteristics of Afro-Cuban bass is the syncopation and the anticipation of harmony, predominantly being on beat 2 and beat 4. For example, in the first coro of the study piece.
Si solo para esta noche bailamos, solo tenemos una vida, bailamos.
Another vital aspect of this music, and I mean vital, I mean as important as having wheels on your car, as important as having strings on your bass, is the clave. But why is it so important, I hear you scream? So the word clave translates from Spanish and means key, as in key to the door. The clave is the spine of Afro-Cuban music, and the clave determines the rhythmical phrasing of the whole ensemble, from the melody and solos right down the line to the rhythm section. Now, this is where the anticipation and the syncopation of what I was talking about with the bass comes into play. So for example, in the first coro, the bass plays minimally, playing in between the clave on the 2 part, on beats 2 and then on the 3 side of the clave, the bass plays on beat 2 and on beat 4 with the clave. Now, before we start to talk about how to practice this syncopation and playing with the clave, I will say that if you're new to this is hard. This is really hard. I remember when I was first starting to learn this style of music, it took me a long time and it's really difficult, but it's worth it, because once you've got it in your system, your time feel and your playing in different styles will be much stronger. So to practice this syncopation, I would recommend playing this fundamental son bass line on 1 chord, in this example in C. So we're going to be playing the root, C, then we're going to be playing the 5th, G, and then we're going to be playing the octave, C, and then back down again. I'd also recommend playing along with a clave to instill the connection between the bass line and the clave, like so. Do this for a long time and then go back and do it for even longer. I think that's really the only way to do it. So once you're comfortable with playing the syncopation on 1 chord, then start introducing some different harmony in there as well, like so. once you're comfortable playing around changes, then you can start to incorporate some different ideas into the tumbao to be more musical and more expressive, while still playing with the clave. For example,
Bailamos, si solo para esta noche. Bailamos, solo tenemos.
to give you a very brief history lesson, in the 16th century, West African slaves were taken to the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico and the island of Cuba. And with them they brought their own rhythms, including the clave. Now the clave blossomed in Cuba, and with West African cultures fusing with Cuban cultures, this then sparked the development of what we know now as salsa. In the 19th century, when slavery was abolished, many ex-slaves migrated to the United States, to cities such as New Orleans and New York. Then around the time of the Second World War and the Great Depression, this sparked what is now known as the Gran Migración, which is, in English, the Great Migration. Now this is where thousands upon thousands of Puerto Ricans migrated to the States in order to replace the American workforce who are out at war, mainly migrating to New York, which then, obviously children being born, generated a new nickname for New York born Puerto Ricans, New Yorkers. So where am I going with this? Two of the biggest salsa bass players are New Yorkers, Bobby Valentin and Salvador Cuevas. In English, Bobby Valentin and Salvador Cuevas. Bobby Valentin and Salvador Cuevas were both members of the Fania All-Stars. First Bobby, then later Sal Cuevas. Sal Cuevas, in addition to playing salsa, he was also a busy session musician in New York, playing with a range of artists from Lenny Kravitz, Billy Idol, Cissy Houston, and obviously being in New York, the music melting pot of the world, he was inspired by rock and roll, rhythm and blues, funk, jazz. So then Salvador Cuevas was one of the first bass players to start then incorporating all these different influences that were surrounding him into his salsa playing, and incorporating different techniques such as slapping and playing chords and double stops on the bass. For example, in the second solo of the study piece. The key to practicing this music in Afro-Cuban bass is to not practice it until you get it right, but practice it until you cannot get it wrong. There's a lot of legitimate salsa musicians out there who have been born into this tradition and the culture. So for those of us who haven't been born into the culture and the tradition, we've got a bit of catching up to do, like me. So I'd recommend, learn the language, learn to speak Spanish, learn how to dance, figure out how the dance moves correspond with the music and the clave. Always be listening to the music, figuring out what style it is. Even if you're just listening subconsciously, while you're driving or while you're cooking your dinner. do these things to cultivate your environment so that you can absorb the culture just as a child would. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I really hope that you've enjoyed this introduction to Afro-Cuban music and a little bit of a history lesson as well. Get a practice in this music because it can do wonders for all the other styles that you guys play. And to check that you've been taking my advice, I might even do the next lesson in Spanish. All the best, and remember that there's always something to learn from every bass line. I'll see you soon.